everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. I'm Joe, and joined with Isaac. But Eli couldn't be here today as he's has some other prior engagements to do. But we are here to review, uh, give our thoughts and review the Bears' ugly loss to the Patriots, which I sadly kind of called last week on our podcast. I said one of us should pick the Patriots, but we all didn't because we all figured the Bears were going to win because they have the better roster. And yeah, we're here now, and they lost, and it's definitely crisis mode, even though the coach doesn't want to accept the fact that we're in crisis mode. Um, so yeah, I'll kick it over to you, Isaac. What were your thoughts about this game? Initial thoughts about this terrible loss to the Patriots?
Yeah, absolutely horrible. I don't think that we should have lost this game, and to only put up 3 points to the Patriots is embarrassing. The other thing that's crazy to me is Caleb Williams getting sacked 9 times against a Patriots defensive line that isn't the best. It's just honestly like every week there's just been a new low. Like last week, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure this game couldn't be any worse than the Cardinals game, and then it gets worse. And it's frustrating. And I feel like on this podcast, we've been saying the same stuff for quite some time now, where, nothing's going right. The coaching is just not a good coaching staff. They have to go and stuff like that. But I basically kind of summed up my thoughts on one of my recent articles, and I'll kind of share that with you guys right now. So I basically said, when it comes to crushing the hopes and dreams of players and fans alike, no one does it better than the Chicago Bears. And it sucks because, I talk to like my friends and stuff like that, and they'll basically bash on the Bears on how bad they are and stuff like that. But even when the players are starting to give up, it's really a bad thing. And they basically asked one of the Bears captains, Kevin Byard, if he believes that the coaching staff has lost the locker room. And instead of saying no or basically trying to defend the coaching staff, he said, "I'm not going to go there." And I understand like it makes sense to not fully defend the coaching staff, but I mean, there's got to be something that needs to be done, right? There's got to be some change that has to happen. And when there's prominent NFL analysts like Louis Riddick basically describing the Bears offense as having no game plan, like if they're ordering off a menu, or Todd McShay echoing that it's hard to watch what's going on with the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams. It's pretty clear that there's a huge problem, right? And the thing that's crazy to me is some of these statistics that were being released after the Bears Patriots game. Like the last 3 games on offense, we've had 34 possessions and only 27 points. Like that is literally impossible to do. Like we haven't been scoring since the Jacksonville Jaguars game. We've been outscored 66 to 27 since the bye week. And again, I bring up this every week basically, but this is such a crucial element that I don't know if any head coach would still be employed if they've lost 4 games with a 91% chance or higher win probability in the fourth quarter and lost. So it's unacceptable, right? And I feel like the best way to describe the Bears right now is a puzzle that can't be completed. And what I mean by this is we have the right pieces on both sides of the ball, on offense and defense. We are sure we don't have the best offensive line and stuff like that, but I feel like on paper we have a pretty good roster. But without the right coaching, without the right ownership, it's just never gonna happen. We're never gonna be a competent franchise. And it's just like the ownership is okay with being mediocre every season, and the fans, no matter how much they've complained and begged for change or for any sort of like acknowledgement that, you know what, we're not doing a good job right now, we're gonna make some changes, they just don't. They're cheap. They don't want to fire Eberflus midseason, but the thing is, like, most people are talking about firing Eberflus midseason isn't going to help. I mean, sure, it might not help in the sense of like winning games, but it's going to help with developing Caleb Williams because we've been seeing over the past couple of weeks that he's basically lost what a lot of the qualities that made him the consensus #1 overall pick. His deep ball accuracy hasn't been good. I mean, frankly, from the start, but still. His anticipation from the pocket has been getting worse. He hasn't been able to avoid the pass rush as good as he's started, in the beginning of the season, but it's just and people make like people are trying to defend, Eberflus saying, "Oh, the offensive line is atrocious," but Drake May, I mean, we saw the Patriots; they don't have a good offensive line either, but Drake May was able to play, decent football and beat us 19-3. So it's, something's got to change, and I'm tired of saying this, but the Bears, they're just not. Pretty much one of the worst teams in the NFL at this point. So I'll toss it back to you, Joe, and your thoughts on the Bears and what happened with the Patriots.
I was honestly, genuinely so sick to my stomach watching that game. We should have known, like, after the first two drives, I was like, okay, well, they never do anything in the first quarter. But after that, I thought that, maybe start to get something going. I shouldn't have. I had my hopes too high. Should have realized that, hey, they're not going to do anything if they aren't starting out the game good against a bad team. They started out the game with their first three possessions. They were started their first possession. They started on, um, they started on the Patriots 47-yard line. Their next, but they didn't do anything with that. The next possession, they started on their own 40-yard line because of a kickoff out of bounds, or not out of bounds, but it was short of the landing zone. They started on their own 40-yard line. Didn't do anything with that. And then the next possession, they started on their own 47-yard line or 48-yard line because they intercepted Drake May. TJ Edwards intercepted Drake May, which was probably the best play of the day, which is sad to say because that happened in the first quarter. Um, so and they, like I said, they didn't do anything with that. So I should have realized that they're not going to win this game when they didn't do anything with those three possessions. Because when you're a good team, or at least a team that doesn't suck, you do something with one of those three possessions. You score on one of those three possessions. You should score on all three of those because basically we're working with less half the field or less than half the field. You shouldn't not score on any of those drives. And they didn't, which again should have told me they weren't going to win. But I believe they were still going to win and figure it out, and they didn't. Um, you brought up the Patriots pass rush getting 9 sacks. That's terrible. Uh, not just for the offensive line and Caleb Williams, but when you look at their talent versus our talent, we have Montez Sweat, who's was the best pass rusher on that field. I don't think he get a sack in that game. I don't think we got any sacks in Drake May. I, unless I'm wrong, you can correct me, Isaac. But I don't think we got any sacks in Drake May, which is very embarrassing because, like we said, Patriots offensive line was one of the worst in the league. I mean, after this week, we you can't really say that. I guess you can now say the Bears have the worst offensive line in the league because they just do after what we just witnessed. But yeah, I can't believe we're here. Um, we everyone besides that coach knows that the Bears are in crisis mode. That coach very blatantly refuses to accept the fact that his team's in crisis mode. They're losing three straight games and a game to a team they should never have lost to, who they are better on paper than, and who the Patriots just aren't a team who is good yet. They just aren't. Like Vic May, he's gonna get there, but he's not there yet. Yeah, he played better than Caleb Williams, but everyone's playing better than Caleb Williams because our OC can't call good plays on a consistent basis. He had one very decent play call that play action bootleg to well, he had a couple of decent play calls, but one that I liked the most was play action boot to Ramadunze because Rome was wide open and he got the catch and ran for like 12 yards. We never went back to that. I don't understand why we wouldn't go back to that. It worked. And then we also ran a couple speed out concepts. Those worked. We ran two of those. You could have ran more of those, but we're working. You didn't run more of those. Instead, you chose to run screen passes that don't work and lose yards when we can't block. And also, speaking of blocking, our freaking high Gerald Everett, who we brought here to be a compliment to Cole Kmet, literally has not done anything this year that has been good. He has, I think, what was it 7 catches for 30 yards this year? And then he hasn't been blocking good. He missed a block. He blatantly just didn't block somebody this weekend. When if he did, the play would have probably went for 5 to 10 yards. Uh, so yeah, that's ugly. But speaking of Shane Waldron, um, this this morning on Kevin J Hood, and then also today during Matt Eberflus's press conference, he said that in the middle of the process of talking about what they're going to do with the offensive play calling and changing the offensive play caller. First of all, I'm gonna. I just want to say how it doesn't take a well, it shouldn't take a competent coach. It should take just someone who has any little brain cell in their freaking head understand that what he did, what Walter's been doing the past 3 weeks is fireable, like right after that game, especially after we lost to the Patriots. He just been gone should have been gone right there, and somehow Flus hasn't fired him, and um sounds like Flus is also just in full control of his coaching staff and who he can hire and fire. So, um, what's your thoughts on them not deciding just right after the game they're going to be the play caller, and B, the fact that Flus has full control over firing Jalen Waldron. He doesn't seem like he wants to do it.
Yeah, so to what you were asking earlier about if the Bears got a sack on Drake May, they did, but it was Jacob Martin in the first quarter, and that's about it, which is really embarrassing. But to go back to what you were asking, absolutely, like they should, like what you said, basically, like if anyone has a brain cell, they know that not, just firing Waldron is gonna help, right? And what they're gonna likely do is change the play calling duty to probably Thomas Brown, the passing game coordinator that we got from the Panthers. But it's infuriating, and I know it makes a lot of Bears fans pissed. It makes you and I pissed, and I'm sure it makes Eli pissed. And to answer your second question about the fact that Eberflus has full control over, who to fire and hire, it's stupid. I mean, Eberflus is basically the biggest reason that the Bears are, sucking right now. So if I mean I don't- we can't really trust Eberflus to make a right decision right now. And just hearing him talk in the press conference on Monday about all the stuff that was going on, and he's basically been like avoiding answering anything. And like you mentioned, Joe, like he doesn't realize or understand or want to admit that we're in a crisis right now. Like this is really bad. This is worse than bad. Like this is something that we can't recover from this season. And it's really infuriating because we're ruining the development of Caleb Williams. Like I've saw a post from FanDuel where they're like, "Oh, is Caleb Williams a bust?" No, he's not. I mean, not right now, but I hope he's not. And the thing is like he he was a consensus number one overall pick for a reason. And he had all the qualities that you could want in a franchise quarterback. And there was teams that were literally fighting over if they could have the chance to even trade for him up to the number one overall pick to trade for Caleb or to draft Caleb Williams. It wasn't like Jaden Daniels was in the mix for the number one overall pick, and it wasn't like Drake May or Bo Nix were in the mix for the number one overall pick. It was literally Caleb Williams the whole way. So it sucks to see that we're at this point in the season where we're talking about this stuff. And I want Eberflus gone. I want Waldron gone. And it brings up a discussion of whether Ryan Post has to be fired as well, because the two things that he's really messed up on were one, sticking with Eberflus that everyone knew that Eberflus should have not been the head coach this season, and two, not building the offensive line adequately, because this guy was a former offensive lineman, and yet he's literally just avoided trying to invest in the offensive line at all. Like signing Coleman Shelton for like 3 million in free agency, trading for Ryan Bates, signing Matt Pryor. These are not big moves that are gonna help the offensive line, right? And then in the draft, you draft a guy from Yale University that has an injury history that we knew he wasn't gonna be a big part of the offense this season. And that's it. Like that's your solution for this offensive line. Like I don't know. It's been three seasons already where we've seen the same stuff over and over again. Like I just I don't understand it, and it's super frustrating, but I mean it is what it is right now. The best thing for us going forward as a team is to start making the right decisions and to start making sure that, this guy isn't worth keeping on this team anymore. And I don't know if the ownership is going to be able to make a decision like that because they frankly haven't, like, at all. So I'll just toss it back to you, Joe, and that was basically my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Um, Going back to the offensive line, obviously we all know it sucks. But not in this past offseason, but in 2023, I'm pretty sure Mike McGlinchey was a free agent, and I don't think he's played as well as he did before he got his contract. Um, Next it might have been it was either 2023 or 2022. One of those 2 years he was a free agent, and the Bears could have signed him. It was going to be a lucrative contract, but you could have signed him. It would have helped you uh on your offensive line, even if he isn't what he used to be. He's still better than whatever you have right now. Um, Again, if you can check real quick, Eli, which year he got signed, that'd be good. But just to help my point. But yeah, if the Bears could have signed the guy, um, they didn't, and now their offensive line still is not great. I mean, we saw this with Justin Fields, like, and Mitch Trubisky before him, and everybody, and Jay Cutler before him. Like, you don't have an offensive line, can't do anything. I mean, somehow Drake May was able. I mean, because we didn't get pressure on Drake May, but like Drake May with a bad offensive line was able to do stuff. A, because he's apparently a better play caller, but B, just because we couldn't get pressure. But our offensive line, on the other hand, gives up everything all the time. Our center gets blown back a lot of plays. We miss Simon sometimes. Um, one is I do want to say though, one of the sacks that the offensive or that Caleb Williams took, uh, like for sure wasn't on the block on the offensive line. Caleb Williams didn't identify play correctly, and the offensive line was doing a different blocking scheme because the safety or cornerback rotated out. Uh, so that sack wasn't on him. That was I think it was either second and 10 or third and 10 inside our own 10-yard line. But Caleb got sacked. That wasn't technically on the offensive line. It was on Caleb, and I guess it was kind of on the offensive line. But it was more on Caleb for not identifying the coverage correctly or the rush correctly. But still, our offensive line just isn't good. And yeah, I mean, we can we can sit here and blame Ryan Poles all we want for that because you know what, he wasn't a former offensive lineman, but also I think you got to remember just because someone was a former position, play that position formerly, doesn't mean they are a guru. We want them to be a guru, but that he obviously didn't like. He wasn't an NFL lineman for a long time. I think he was on the Bears for a couple years, but he never started. Or at least he was on the Bears. Maybe he got cut. Not maybe he got cut. Maybe it was after preseason. It was in '05 or '06. So I'm too young to remember him. But from what I remember from what people have said, I think he was '05 or '06. Um, so yeah, but he got cut. So like, yes, we want to think he's a guru because he played the position, but he obviously wasn't good enough to make a living off of it. So like maybe he can't. I don't want to say he can't evaluate, like for sure he can't evaluate offensive linemen, but maybe he's not as good of an offensive lineman evaluator as we think he is, especially because he said this offseason that this is the best offensive line depth, offensive line room slash depth he's ever had. And maybe that's true, but that also could mean, not could mean, that also means that you don't have any studs, and that's not a good thing. Because if anybody could overtake anybody, then your offensive line isn't good, and we've seen that all year. Um, yeah, I'll sit or back to you if you have any more thoughts on polls on the offensive line or anything else about this Bears team right now.
Yeah, so what you asked about Mike McGlinchey, he was signed in the 2023 offseason. So yeah. But you know, when Poles was talking about this is the best depth we've ever had. I agree with him. I do think we did have a lot of depth, but like you said, like depth doesn't mean that it's a bunch of star players and then good depth. He probably meant like, we don't have those stud players up front. Which brings me to one thing I want to talk about, and it's Tevin Jenkins. So Tevin Jenkins was hurt during the game. This was the fifth game out of six of the recent games that had to go out due to injury. And I think, yesterday there was a lot of bad, but this was really where I took a lot of like thought into when I saw Tevin Jenkins walk out with the injury. And it's, do we re-sign him or do we let him walk in free agency? And for the longest time, I always thought it would be better to re-sign him. And at first, I was like, you know what, we just got to give him however much he wants, like in the very beginning. And then I got to the point where it's maybe we could just give him like a team-friendly deal and he'll want to stay. But now I don't even know if I want to re-sign him because he's just been too injury prone, and we have to have guys that are reliable up front because right now we don't have a lot of it. Like literally no one besides Coleman Shelton, and I mean Shelton hasn't been the best either. So, but no one has really been reliable up front. Like Braxton Jones has missed time, Darnell Wright has missed time, Tevin Jenkins, and the right guard has been horrible. Like Nate Davis has been just an absolute disappointment. So. I don't think that the Bears should re-sign Tevin Jenkins. I think there's going to be better options in free agency. We could invest our money elsewhere, and I think we should really attack offensive line during the draft. If it's anything less than three picks that are used on offensive linemen, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. And then in free agency, like there's going to be a high profile offensive linemen that are going to be free agents, like Kansas City right guard Trey Smith. We should be able to just tell him, you know what, like you should come here. We'll give you however much you want. But we need stability and we need it fast. So I wanted to ask you, Joe, what were your thoughts on Tevin Jenkins so far? And do you think that we should resign him or just let him go during free agency this offseason?
Um, so I just like, okay. So I will say I kind of had the same thought after the game about Tevin Jenkins because he's been hurt. He said he was going to play through injuries this year, and he has, but he's also been hurt almost every single game. So I was on the bandwagon of like you giving him a team friendly deal up until I've seen what happened this past game. I'm I love I love to have he played really well last season when he was fully healthy. He mauled people, but he hasn't doing that this year, and he's been hurt every game. I am kind of out on Tev now, but the question is, with that, what are you gonna do with the offensive line? Because you basically need to then replace your left guard, right guard, and your center, and can't really do all of that at once. In the one off season, so like you're gonna have to bite the dust. Maybe you start Ryan Bates at center next year. I think the Bears signed him to a multiple year deal. So maybe you start Ryan Bates at center next year, and then you draft a left guard and right guard. Um, but yeah, I don't think you keep Tav after him getting hurt every game this year and missing time. Um, but yeah, I want to move it back over real quick to the team, just team up overall and effort and stuff. So about an hour ago, Jalen Johnson was on uh 670 the score, and he was talking about how that you can't really make somebody make a teammate work hard. Like you can and can't make a teammate work harder than they want to. Like you can try to lead by example and stay afterwards and do more reps or like go on the drugs machine. And some a player can see you do that, and it's really their prerogative. Like see you do that over a extended amount of time. It's really their prerogative if they want to uh do it with you. Some he was bringing up examples like You know, they'll say like, "Oh, I gotta pick my go pick my kid up." Maybe you do have to do that, sure, but s- sometimes go get someone else to pick your kid up and stay in and do more work. And they're just not. He didn't call anybody specifically out, but you can assume that some players on the Bears are doing that, are doing more of the latter than what Jalen Johnson is probably doing, which is staying afterwards and putting in more reps and stuff. So I wanted to know, how do you feel about that? Do you agree with what Jalen's just saying, or do you think that there are other ways to motivate your teammates to do more work than I kind of is required, but they are pros, so like they should be putting all the work they can into winning.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree with Jalen Johnson. Like, these are pro athletes, these are adults, like you can't really just tell someone to work harder or to do stuff after practice. But it should be something that is noticed throughout the team. Like, okay, this guy isn't really putting in effort and stuff like that. And Cole Kmet, another Bears captain, talked about this a couple weeks ago, where it's like if you don't put in the extra practice and the extra effort, you're not gonna get rewarded. And he was basically saying like he's noticed where people haven't really put in the extra effort, and it's showed on game day. Um, and I don't want to. Cole Kmet or Jalen Johnson didn't specifically call out a player, but one player that has really, I feel like just watching on film and during the game has shown to be that kind of player where he doesn't really put in the extra effort and stuff like that is Tyrique Stevenson. Um, and obviously like the Hail Mary thing was one thing, but just in general, I feel like Stevenson hasn't played to what we thought he would be this season. And there was a video or Patriots wide receiver Jalen Polk was talking about how he watched film and he noticed that Stevenson would bite on some plays, and so he wanted to test that out. And he happened to test that out when he got that touchdown pass from Drake May. So it was like he Stevenson was kind of like trapped in where Polk was blocking at first, and then he broke out and got that easy touchdown pass. And like I can't really force, I feel like me personally, I feel like you can't really force someone to do the extra work or, yeah, I can't really tell like my teammate, hey, can you get someone else to pick up your kid today or something like that. But I do think like having a meeting with like the players because I already know the team captains had meetings with the coaches and stuff like that. But if I was Jalen Johnson, if I was Cole Kmet or Kevin Byard, like maybe get together with the other captains and say like, guys, like I've noticed this effort is has been unacceptable. Like we need to have a meeting to talk about this. Um, because I know there's guys in that locker room that really care about winning, and they're really frustrated right now with how things are going. But you things can change. Like last season, things weren't going well for the Bears, and we ended up having that little end of the season stretch where we started winning games and stuff like that. But all it takes is one person to really get everyone motivated. I don't know if they've had meetings like that, but I believe they should because even though like things aren't working out right now, I feel like just having that conversation with everyone is gonna help a lot. And it's gonna help the confidence overall because I feel like a lot of guys have lost confidence. We've seen this mostly in Caleb Williams, but I mean, I thought before the season started, we had the best wide receiver trio in the NFL. And looking at it today, it's like DJ Moore has been giving it like maybe 80% on the field. Like he kind of just like jogs off after. Keenan Allen hasn't been he's been dropping a lot of passes, which is really not something that's been a part of Keenan Allen's game forever. And Roma Dunze, he's also been kind of dealing with the same stuff. Like he's been dropping passes. He's just it hasn't the connection hasn't been there with Caleb Williams, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just something that's where it's an effort thing or if it's another component where the coaches are not calling a good game plan, and I'm pretty sure both of it is true. And then just like seeing this happen and for us to even talk about it this season is pretty disappointing. Again, like I felt like this season was gonna be different. I felt like last season we already went through enough, and the season before that, going 3-14. Like this season was supposed to be a season of optimism, a season where we saw development from Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze. We saw the veterans like Keenan Allen come in and really change the culture in this building. And unfortunately, none of that has really happened. And I don't know if it's gonna change this season. Like I don't know if I can confidently say that the Bears are going to turn things around because unlike last season, this end of the season stretch of games is literally the hardest schedule in the NFL. Like it's not going to get easy from here. It's only going to get harder. So yeah, hopefully the guys can change that. Hopefully they can have a meeting or anything. But again, like we've already had so many meetings this year where the players have met with the coaches or the coaches met with other coaches, stuff like that. And I don't know if it obviously hasn't been working, so there's got to be another way, and these guys got to really, think about it and think about, okay, what can I do besides, telling people what to do to get these guys more motivated, right? So we'll see what happens. And hopefully it's all positive and nothing else happens that makes us come back on this podcast and really, just vent about what's not going right. I want to be able to talk about what's going right. And unfortunately that hasn't been the case. So I'll toss it back to you, Joe.
Yeah. So there's this saying: you either coach it or allow it to happen. I heard it earlier. I've heard it a lot over the past 3 weeks. The Bears are allowing the Bears coaching and the Bears players are allowing it to happen. Now, to an extent, I agree with what Jalen said. You can't force somebody to do something they seem that they don't want to do, but you can try your best to get them to see why it's beneficial for them to do. But I also do think it is, again, personal thing because some people want to be the best they can at everything they do, which makes them want to, practice harder, put in that extra work. Some players, they're totally content with being just an NFL player and getting that paycheck and maybe winning, maybe not. Now, I think a good portion of the Bears team want to win games. But I will agree with you with the Tyrique Stevenson thing. We, I mean, we all figured that he'd grow this season. He has not grown this season. There is a very strong argument for the fact that he's regressed. I mean, he's still making those stupid penalties. Obviously, he had that bonehead mistake against the Commanders, and then he's still biting on play actions. He's still he's still getting beat deep and burned. Like he really hasn't improved. And it sucks to see because we thought he would be, a cornerstone of this Bears defense for a while. Honestly, in the limited reps Terrell Smith has had this season, he's played to an extent better than Tyrique Stevenson has. And I think that a, re- a real question, if the Bears do end up replacing Matty Eberflus at the end of the year and the whole coaching staff, is will will the next Bears coaches want Tyrique Stevenson around still, or will they trade him? Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I think for if the Bears are gonna trade Tyreek Stevenson if we have a new coaching staff. I honestly don't think that'll happen. Just because he still has a lot of potential. Like he was a second round pick. I wouldn't count it out though. I would think that, maybe they are done with this guy. Like we don't want this on our team. We'll try and trade him. Maybe we'll get like a fifth or sixth round pick. Um, but I feel like honestly, like I feel like a new ownership wouldn't put up with that BS, and they would probably tell him like, "Hey, man, like, we have a lot of trust in you. Like, we think that you're a good player in this league, but if you mess up again, then that's it." So, that's basically what I think on Tyreek Stevenson.
Yeah, I think I fall in with you. I didn't. I think I heard somewhere that like that floated around, but I genuinely don't think they would do. Maybe I saw it on Reddit or something. Or maybe it was either Reddit or Twitter. I saw it somewhere. That the Bears. if you were the Bears, would you trade Tyrique Stevenson? Um, but I genuinely think he is talented. He just needs to fix his A attitude issues and B, not get as many dumb penalties. Like he was it against the Commanders where he poked Terry McLaurin in the eyes. You can't do that. Like that's not okay. Um, it's a dumb penalty. Um, I do think he's uber talented, and I think a new coaching staff would do exactly what you said. Hey, we believe in you, but you have a very short leash here. If you make any more stupid mistakes, we're done with you. Um, but yeah, do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Bet on Buzz podcast. Uh, we'll be back with a game preview for the Packers game on Friday. We will potentially have Nicholas Mariano here with us. Uh, we still have to see, but the hope is we do. So that'll be fun. Even though the Bears are probably going to get killed by the Packers, but we'll talk about that. Um, like always, be sure to follow us on all of us on Twitter. Um, go to our TikTok, like our shorts, share our shorts, like our TikToks, share our TikToks, and go to our YouTube page, like our shorts, and leave a review of the podcast anywhere you listen to this, and also leave a like on the YouTube version of the podcast. Anything to help us grow, we really appreciate it. We will see you guys all next time.